Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris.
And I'm Robert.
And together, you can watch us on LEGO Masters Season 4, at least for the first episode. We don't know how long we're gonna last. Compete against some of the best LEGO builders in the world in one of the greatest LEGO tournaments ever.
Oh boy, we haven't watched any of the episodes ourselves, so we are so excited to tune in with you guys to watch. But even before all the episodes began, even before all the filming began, we had to really prep for this show. And so we want to tell you all about that process.
Oh yeah, so in this video, we'll be recapping how we trained as a team and individually to get in fighting shape for LEGO Masters Season 4. Because of course, I personally don't really build that many mocks. As you can see, I'm primarily a LEGO set collector. I love building LEGO official sets. But I hadn't really built a ton of mocks in the past, so I really wanted to train myself, but also train my partner Rob.
Oh yeah, I played with it a ton when I was smaller, a bit with Chris in college. There was so much we had to catch up on to prepare for the biggest LEGO tournament on TV in the world.
And so, we had Robert come out to the LEGO Vault, the LEGO collection, and we both trained together in order to really make sure that we were in fighting shape for LEGO Masters Season 4, and let's go into that right now. The very first thing that I did when I first found out that we were going to be on LEGO Masters was to literally go through my entire photo archive and figure out exactly how many mocks have I even made in the past. What can I learn from them? What building techniques did I use for those? And how can I use those to hopefully make myself a better mockist and a better builder going into the competition? And I figured it would be a fun trip down memory lane to showcase some of my earliest mocks right here for this video, right before we get into the training itself. Because I have actually technically made quite a few different mocks out there. I've made builds influenced by other LEGO builds online. I've made revamps of other people's mocks. And really a lot of this was a melting pot that was kind of swirling around my brain that constituted this initial research before actually going into the show itself. Take one of my favorite mocks, for example. This is actually not really something I've ever showed off on YouTube, but this is kind of a reference to Ninjago's Cloud Kingdom as it appeared in Season 5 Possession. I really tried to build rock work to have these angular edges and studs on these side techniques, as well as really try to make the bottom clouds feel sculpted and feel more like clouds. The end result is something that I am personally proud of, but definitely feels very rudimentary right now, and while I'm happy with what I was able to come up with, I definitely feel like this was probably just the beginning of a massive mocking career, hopefully in the future, where I'll be able to build a lot more mocks. From redesigning the base of the Temple of Urjitsu to creating my own Monastery of Spinjitzu mock, I definitely was influenced by my love for LEGO Ninjago in a ton of my system-based brick-built mocks. Those were pretty much all the system mocks I had made, and then I had a ton of Bionicle, CCBS, and Construction mocks that I made circa 2014-2015, right around when Bionicle Generation 2 was launching, and I was incredibly hyped for the launch of the theme. Now, obviously, CCBS Construction Bionicle is long dead, unfortunately speaking, so I wasn't really expecting the Brick Pit for LEGO Masters to really have any CCBS elements, given that they were all discontinued around 2018. And so when training for LEGO Masters, I mostly just kind of referenced these models just to remind myself of sculpting different characters and creatures, and see if I could apply some of the techniques that I had learned while putting together these CCBS and Construction mocks into building actual system-based creatures and characters, which really was the jumping off point for me to start training myself and training Robert on how to build the best system mocks we could. Of course, it was also just a really fun time being able to go back in time, seeing all the hype I had for Bionicle G2, recreating Bionicle G1 characters in CCBS, and the original building system that they had around that time was such a blast that I did around that time period, and it was cool seeing just the different types of things I was making, whether they were builds influenced by other creations posted online or just completely original builds. These were some of the earliest custom creations I had ever made, although if you look at system mocks, I really only made just a couple outside of a few very rudimentary stuff as a kid. Of course, for the Duck Bricks channel, I made a ton of LEGO system-based mosaics, but those are basically just made with the LEGO Art Remix Generator, which is a really great website. Would highly recommend you check it out. That basically just generates mosaics for you. You can of course tweak the settings, but I honestly don't really count these as mocks. They're more like art pieces in my collection. I'll be the first to admit, everyone knows Duck Bricks for being the massive LEGO set collector, not the biggest LEGO mock builder, or really any sort of mock builder at all. And the same goes to Robert, who was interested interested in LEGO before joining the show, but had a lot to learn about the ins and outs of snots versus burps, and really just understanding the LEGO part catalog available to him before joining the show itself. And so, while a lot of our time spent together in Seattle was admittedly spent hanging out with friends and introducing Robert to all my friends in Seattle, most of our time was spent heads down in my LEGO basement training for LEGO Masters Season 4, where we had a very limited amount of time to actually get good at mock building. I'm gonna be honest, I knew we had a long way to go before we were in fighting shape against some of the best LEGO builders in the world. And so to start, I wanted to let Robert get warmed up by helping out the Duck Bricks LEGO set backlog and essentially rebuilding some broken sets for me, because of course that was the best way to start his preparation. You see, I had a number of sets that I had pretty much just needing to be built after coming back home from college. I really don't like building LEGO sets multiple times, so I figured, you know what, why not put my boy Rob to work while I am actually at my own job, and while working, why don't I just give Robert a couple of sets that he can practice building while he gets situated in Seattle. So Robert flew in bright and early, and I let him stay with Duckbricks team member Jake while I was at work. Now, here's the thing. I had already given Robert a package full of all sorts of LEGO models where he could actually take a crack at rebuilding them from my many travels and from transporting them across the country. What Rob did not know is that this would be maybe a little bit more of a difficult task than he imagined. You see, while I did break up the different chunks of the pre-built sets into a few different categories, they were largely unsorted, and essentially he had to put together all the pieces of the set one by one all together and try to figure out which chunk went to what part of the instructions. About halfway through, I think Robert realized that I was just using him for manual labor and this was actually not doing anything to prep for LEGO Masters whatsoever, which I would not say is true. I would not necessarily say is true. As I said to him, why can't it be both? Practice for LEGO Masters as well as helping out Duckbricks with just a little bit of work that needed to be done. But by the end of the day, with my help, we were able to finish building the LEGO sets I had given him to make. Even though I had to go back home at around 3 a.m., it took us a lot longer than expected. We did have a good night, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know if Robert learned much from that experience. And of course, the next day, which was the weekend, we actually started prepping for real. What we did was spend a lot of the weekend sorting and practicing our mock building techniques, really just practicing basic LEGO stuff that typically LEGO employees would be asked if they're applying for a job as a LEGO set designer. Stuff like building a large-scale animal or building a large sphere. That's kind of stuff that LEGO actually asks their employees after they apply to a job as a LEGO designer, so we wanted to practice some of that just to really make sure that we knew how to do basic stuff and could replicate these techniques on the fly. After a pretty intense training session, what better thing to do to relax than, well, go to the LEGO store and absorb more LEGO, because you can never have enough LEGO in your life. So after hanging out at the LEGO store for a little bit and even sharing a drink to celebrate the progress we had made as LEGO builders, all we could do was wait for that very fateful phone call announcing that we in fact were going to be on LEGO Masters Season 4. And if you want to see our raw reaction to that phone call, I've actually already posted that on YouTube on the Duckbricks channel, which was a ton of fun, and I'm so happy I've been able to share even just snippets of my own reaction to finding out that information with all of you. And after that call, I realized that we actually had to practice and train really hard. This was now no joke. This was getting very serious. Robert and I would be on LEGO Masters Season 4. Me, the LEGO-themed YouTuber who doesn't build mocks, and Robert, my friend who, let's just say, had a little bit less experience with LEGO than I did. So we had a lot to prep for, and we started getting very, very serious about our training. What happened was that a few days before filming for the show started, Robert flew out to Seattle and we engaged in several intensive mock building practices where we'd build basically the same exact model in different styles and really try to figure out what we would be able to do. And let's take a look at some of those right now. So I think it'd be pretty funny to showcase some of the models we built to prepare for LEGO Masters. What we did is I sat down, I poured out a ton of bulk bricks, like just unsorted bulk, and I was like, you know what, let's make something, let's try to both make the same thing and see what types of things we can make in different styles.
And we're both huge Lord of the Rings fans, and what greater city to model in Lord of the Rings than the famous Minas Tirith? And look at what we made.
So, if you know me, Duckbricks channel, I don't make mocks, like I don't really make any custom creations. I've made like 2 in my life, and that's a stretch. Like it was a struggle making those two. I guess this counts as 3. But what we did is we both sat down and we're like, okay, how about we each try to make a Minas Tirith model? Yes. What I did is I tried to focus on some of the architecture in terms of utilizing just unique pieces like skis and some of these inverted pieces, as well as mixel joints to actually have the angle of the cliff here go at a different angle than normal. So this one I was actually pretty happy with. Definitely check out the show again if you want to see a real example of the kind of stuff we can make. This was kind of the practice round, so to speak, but this took, I think, around 3 to 4 hours to make. And then, Robert, why don't you tell us about
let me tell you guys about my Minas Tirith. So this is probably my first mock ever, from unsorted Lego bricks, and I was like, all right, let's see what we can do. And so, I have some mixel joints here, or these I don't actually think there are joints here. I think these are just connected with, I think this is just blocks collected on tiles and studs. And then I just built it up and tried to make it work. I'm actually quite proud of this building on top. Other than that, it is somewhat of a mess.
I'm still very curious what the purple was about. Because as you were building it, I saw you slapping purple on. I'm like, what are you doing?
Look, we all know that Lego Masters are suckers for color.
That's true.
And
they do love color.
What would be better than scattering some vibrant purple,
random purple,
all across the city? Unknown purpose, but
unknown purpose.
Just as Lego builders and Lego watchers, you can let your imagination run wild here and really imagine what these things are. Are they buildings? Are they large mushrooms?
You tell us in the comments what you think the purple is supposed to be. It is as much of a mystery to the builder as it is to you. Whatever. Okay. Well, so as we were building these, I think we started to realize a couple of interesting things about how we work as builders. Of course, these are individual builds, but you can see that I really tend to focus on really fine detail. I think that's really where I can specialize in trying to induce a lot of intricate detail into a build, but sometimes spend too much time on the detail. Whereas Robert you were basically done with this really quickly, a lot faster than me, I think.
Yeah.
Because he's really good at getting the general large sculpting approximation together. And so that brought us to the second thing we made.
Yeah, I think, kind of rehashing what Chris said, I think both of us have a lot of really interesting Lego skills, and you'll see that all on the show when you tune in. Chris is so good at these fine details and just really knowing how to use pieces correctly. The most distinct and unique pieces he knows how to repurpose into a million different interesting ways, like these skis on Minas Tirith. Meanwhile, I come from a background of studio art. I'm an engineer. I like to kind of think of things as, what colors can I add? How do I sculpt this thing so that it looks somewhat like what I see it in my head? And of course, engineering-wise, just let's make this thing physically sound so we can shake it a little bit and it wouldn't collapse.
And we did one more practice build as well, because we wanted to build an animal, because I don't think either of us are very good at sculpting animals.
Oh yeah.
Let's check that out.
Let's do it.
This was super interesting, because when we were actually trying to create animals, I think this is where Robert got a chance to really shine, because as you can see, you can clearly see that this is supposed to be some sort of a crocodile or alligator. He's basically just using studs on the side techniques and bricks up, but the sculpting is really good, and you got this done very, very quickly. I remember that this really showed me that you're a good planner when it comes to building, because I think you sketched out the overall shape of the crocodile first. I just started building. But you actually were able to get a lot of good detail done at scale quickly.
As we can see, Chris is so good at using these unique pieces, unique techniques. I think it probably comes from building tens of thousands of Lego sets, just picking that up set by set. As for me, this is entirely brick built. With some studs on the side, but pretty simple build in general, but I just tried to capture the essence of a crocodile kind of swimming and surfacing on top of the water, and I think I did all right.
Yeah, so this was super cool because we felt that going in, we weren't really that good at making animals, so we wanted to practice it. I definitely don't know if I'm still, I don't think I would say I'm good still, even after the show. Like, I'm still pretty dubious in the way it's built. But I think I was pretty happy with some small bits, like the eyes here. If we can zoom into the way the eyes were done, I was pretty happy with that part of particular construction. All of this is utilizing a technique that they use on the X-Wings from Star Wars to kind of have an angle for studs on the side, angling inwards, and then using plates on the top, which was super parts heavy. I think I ran out of green parts, like, very quickly. But, you got the head of the crocodile. And
yeah.
in here, I just like the way the eyes and the nostrils are done here because you can really like see the details. So pretty interesting. Yours is also bigger, which also showed me that at the same amount of time, you could build bigger than me and achieve pretty much the same effect. Like this would have been completely good for the show if we needed to make a crocodile head, I feel.
Probably would have, if we had an entire crocodile.
Yeah, like that would have been a pretty good scale. So that way we were able to really try to optimize. Now again, we only basically had the one day before flying out to really practice because I was having him build like sets and stream with me for the other days. And of course, I just had to build a LEGO Ninjago themed mock to prepare for LEGO Masters. In the past, I have done some Ninjago themed mocks like this Cloud Kingdom here, as well as a rebuilt Monastery of Spinjitzu years and years ago back in 2019 or 2020. But this was really the first time I was sitting down with a bunch of fresh bricks and trying to put something together really to test my mettle in terms of adding power functions into a build, adding some technic posability, creature building. Really what I was trying to do was use one mock to encompass all sorts of building techniques, from organic water to a creature head to motorized functions. This mock had it all, and it was essentially inspired by a piece of concept artwork which was initially published for LEGO Ninjago Seabound, showcasing Nia facing off against the Great Serpent Wojira, which you can kind of see obviously is very different from how the serpent eventually appeared like in the Ninjago TV show, but I kind of wanted to put my own spin on it as well and really try to get a ton of NPUs or nice parts usages integrated into the build itself. Robert and I had a ton of fun trying to put this together and really portray our own story by a single build, and I'm actually really proud of how this one turned out because it was just such a fun thing to work on to prep for LEGO Masters. We even prepared a fun little pitch and story presentation for the model because we were actually really proud of how it turned out. The waves of the endless sea outside Ninjago City churn as the Great Serpent Wojira makes her way to the heart of Ninjago, awakened after years in slumber. Tossing up ancient shipwrecks and boats alike, Wojira hurtles for the city, unstoppable, until one ninja merges with the ocean, becoming one with the water, making the ultimate sacrifice as she bursts forth, ready to confront the terrible beast. This is Nia vs. Wojira, the final showdown. But once all the building was done and we felt sufficiently prepped, at least for the first episode of LEGO Masters, we had worked up quite an appetite. So of course, Rob and I hit up all of these Seattle restaurant favorites, check out Food Bricks if you haven't already, like Fogo de Chão Brazilian Steakhouse, and celebrated by having some of the nicest Wagyu cuts they had to offer, which I would highly recommend. Absolutely fantastic meal. Of course, Robert decided to celebrate by eating raw batter at Fogo de Chão as well. I can't question that one, but you can see the effect it had on him very shortly afterwards. But we were able to go and enjoy some dumplings at Din Tai Fung and even hit the club together and visit a few of our friends as well, just to celebrate right before we were actually able to go off. The next day we enjoyed some Mexican food and then it was off to practicing for LEGO Masters. Here are those aforementioned mocks in progress that we mentioned we were working on. This was the Minas Tirith mock that I was building, which really was trying to focus on intricate detail and different types of buildings scattered throughout. I definitely was inspired by a couple of other mocks that I'd seen online, but definitely was a really cool experience because I haven't really made any mocks before. In fact, the build that you'll see us do on episode 1 of the show is kind of my first mock, unless you count some Bionicle stuff that I've done in the past. It was like my first serious mock, so we really went into this with a minimum amount of experience, but with the maximum amount of training we could possibly do to get ourselves ready. We had a few hours to put together Minas Tirith from Lord of the Rings, and then gave ourselves a few more hours to work on our crocodiles, which also was a unique challenge in terms of sculpting the different styles of the crocodiles themselves. For nostalgic reasons, I have still kept all of these models, even though they are definitely very rudimentary compared to what I now know that I can do. They'll definitely serve as really fun early souvenirs as some of the first things that we built to prep for LEGO Masters, and they deserve a place in my LEGO collection, as rudimentary as some of them may be. Now, of course, afterwards, we were able to share a nice meal with our friends, and then of course play a last game of Stratego, the classic board game, before it was soon time to actually be able to go off. And finally, the night before our flight, we embarked on the most important thing that one could do when prepping for LEGO Masters, which was of course watching the LEGO Batman movie. I also brought alongside some LEGO Batman paraphernalia to hopefully get signed by Will Arnett. More on that later. And soon enough, we found ourselves leaving SeaTac Airport. I had my classic pasta dish at Polino's Pastaria, and we had made our way over to begin filming the show, where a crazy adventure was about to await.
And now, that about sums up our training for LEGO Masters Season 4.
All right, I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the process behind our journey of training for LEGO Masters Season 4.
It was fun, it was tiring, all-nighters abound.
Oh yeah.
But it was a fun and amazing process, and I would do it all over again if I could.
And so, tune in next Thursday, where you can watch the premiere of LEGO Masters Season 4 and see just how well we did in this grand tournament.